But Ukraine is far, far worse. I mean, Bosnia had all the tragedy of what was in effect a civil war, Bosnian Serbs, Bosnian Croats, Bosnian Muslims fighting each other. But it didn't have wider international repercussions. It didn't affect the Balkans as a whole. What happens in Ukraine is an attempt by Putin to extinguish a whole country as an independent state. And that has profound implications for the whole of Europe and indeed for the wider world. For example, we're seeing that the Chinese president now is supporting attempts to get a negotiated ceasefire. That is very much to be welcomed.
Yeah, that's hugely significant, isn't it? This follows on from a video call that Xi Jinping had yesterday with Olaf Scholz of Germany and President Macron of France. And it was the first sign, really, of a kind of fracture between that relationship between China and Russia. Can we make too much of that, or is that possibly going to be the undoing?
Well, it's not that he's breaking with Putin. He will remain extremely close to Putin. They have a mutual interest in being allies in most respects. But I think Xi Jinping has been as astonished and disturbed as Putin himself must have been by the extraordinary robust international response and the dramatic impact of the sanctions. Given that Russia's whole $650 billion worth of foreign exchange completely blocked, they can't use it. Given all the other controls now, the dropping of the gas project and so forth. What China will be worried about is that has consequences for the world, economic consequences for China, because of its, it wants to see a stable international economic system. And it knows that as long as there's this conflict going on, that can't happen.
I put it to you, Sir Malcolm, would Liz Truss maybe be better in Beijing today than in Washington? Is there a deal to be done with the Chinese? Because, they're taking Russian oil, they're taking Russian gas. They want this economic stability, as you point out. Could we not just be tightening the screw a bit between China and Russia?
Well, I don't think you should be expecting that kind of development. China and Russia, because they have two similar authoritarian systems, it's in their interest to work very closely together. And of course, Xi Jinping has the issue of Taiwan. And he has seen, and he is seeing at this very moment, how the invasion of Ukraine has not gone smoothly, despite Russia being, in theory, an infinitely more powerful country. And he's seen how the unifying of the Ukrainian nation means, at the very least, this is going to be a very long conflict with an insurgency following any military cessation of hostilities. So he's now got to draw implications of that for what he might otherwise have wanted to do in Taiwan. And I think that is just as important as the matters we're immediately addressing.
So Malcolm Rifkin, I presume yesterday you watched as President Zelensky gave that historic address in the Commons. And I just wanted to get your response to it because obviously, never been done before, hugely significant, appealing for more support and thanking Boris Johnson for what he's done so far, but ultimately not getting what he wanted, which is this no-fly zone.
Well, first of all, never underestimate the symbolism of certain events that can happen in a crisis. And, in a strange sort of way, Vladimir Putin has done more to unify the Ukrainian nation, to create an undoubted Ukrainian nation than could have been achieved without him. Because when you attack a country and when you threaten its very existence and when you bomb its people and you slaughter many of them, of course, what do you expect to happen? Putin should remember the history of Russia. When Hitler invaded Russia, Stalin didn't call upon the Russian people to defend the Communist Party. He said, fight for Mother Russia. And they did, even those who were anti-communist. So the same is happening in Ukraine. And it is ironic that Putin should be responsible for that.
Well, we earlier in the programme, Sir Malcolm, you may well know, we had Robert Fox, who's the defence editor at the Evening Standard. And Robert was just giving his analysis on various things. And he said he just can't understand or believe, and I thought this was interesting, he said this, that we, the West, maybe the UK specifically, are being so timid. We're being timid about no-fly zones. We're being timid about not sending in humanitarian people on the ground. I'm assuming you don't agree.
I must respectfully disagree. And I've served as Defence Secretary, as you know, as well as Foreign Minister. And you cannot have a no-fly zone unless you're willing to enforce it with fighter aircraft and go to war with the people who might breach that. Remember what happened in Srebrenica, in Bosnia, when Srebrenica was declared a safe zone. And there were some Dutch troops there, but far too few, and they had no air support. And the result, the consequence was that it was ignored. And the outcome was the slaughter of thousands of people in the Srebrenica massacre. So you can't calling something a safe zone or a no-fly area makes you feel good. But it can only make military sense if you're prepared to fight to defend it. And what the United States, United Kingdom, all of NATO has the decision taken a long time ago, and it's been the correct decision. However much we will help in other ways Ukraine, we cannot risk a third world war by a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia when NATO itself is not directly being attacked.